It had been months since my life had made any sense. The kind of months that blend into each other until you forget what day it is, what time it is, or why you even bother waking up. My girlfriend, no, my ex, had left me for someone else. I lost my job 2 weeks later, and then the walls of my apartment started feeling smaller every day. There were days I didn't even open the curtains. I just sat there, scrolling through the same messages, reading the same lies, wishing for the same person who never looked back. My friend Hannah was the one who said it. You need help. Liv, you can't do this alone. I remember laughing. Help felt like a word meant for people who could still feel something. But she wouldn't give up. She sent me a name, Dr. Harper, clinical therapist, private practice downtown. She said everyone who saw her came back changed. I didn't want change. I wanted numbness. But one night around 2 a.m., when I couldn't stop crying, I booked an appointment online. The rain that morning felt heavier than usual. The city looked blurred behind my car window, like someone had taken a wet brush and dragged it across the skyline. I almost turned back twice, but somehow I ended up outside a quiet brick building with ivy crawling up its walls. A small brass plate read Dr. Harper and Associates. I took a deep breath that didn't go anywhere and went inside. The waiting room was soft beige walls, dim light, the faint smell of lavender and old books. A tiny water fountain gurgled in the corner, and for a moment, I felt like the only thing still breathing. Then I heard a voice, Olivia. I turned. She was nothing like what I expected. Not old, not distant. She looked like someone who'd spent a lifetime learning to listen. Late 30s, maybe. Warm brown eyes that didn't just look at you, they saw you. Her hair was tied loosely, her posture calm, her presence quietly commanding. I'm Dr. Harper, she said, extending her hand. I hesitated, then shook it. Her skin was cool, steady. She led me into her office. The room was painted in muted tones, with shelves of psychology books and a single orchid by the window. The couch looked too comfortable for what I was there to do. I sat on the edge anyway. So, she began softly, what brings you here today? I shrugged. I guess everything. She didn't write that down. She didn't even move her pen. She just tilted her head, studying me. Everything sounds heavy. I wanted to smile, but it came out as a tremor. Yeah, it's been heavy. What does heavy feel like to you? The question was strange. It wasn't the kind of question I expected. I looked at the ceiling. Like I'm underwater. I can see the surface, but I can't swim up. She nodded slowly. That sounds exhausting. Her tone wasn't sympathy, it was understanding. Like she'd been there once. And when I looked at her, I saw something flicker behind her calm eyes. Sadness, maybe. Recognition. She didn't interrupt me when I started talking. I talked about the breakup, the betrayal, the nights I couldn't sleep. I talked about how love had turned into noise loud and senseless. And she just listened, sometimes leaning forward, sometimes closing her eyes like she could feel my words. When I finally stopped, the room felt too quiet. I wiped my face with my sleeve. Sorry, I whispered. Don't be sorry, she said softly. You've been touched by pain in ways words can't carry, haven't you? I froze. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Slow, measured, like a secret. Confession. No therapist had ever spoken to me like that before. It wasn't clinical. It wasn't rehearsed. It was human, and it broke something open inside me. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat ached. She reached for the box of tissues and placed it beside me, her fingers brushing mine for a moment. A small, electric moment that shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. I felt seen. I felt like I mattered again. As I looked up, she was still watching me, her expression unreadable but tender. You're safe here, Olivia, she said. You don't have to hide anything. The words hung in the air longer than they should have. Safe. It had been so long since. Anyone said that to me, we talked for another hour. But I barely remember what was said after that. I remember her laugh low and careful. I remember the way she smiled when she said my name, like she was testing how it sounded on her tongue. I remember thinking how strange it was that comfort could come from a stranger. When the session ended, she stood up first. "You did really well today," she said. I know it's not easy to open up. I wanted to say thank you, but the words felt small. Instead, I just nodded. She walked me to the door, her hand lightly resting on my shoulder. "Take care of yourself, Olivia. I'll see you next week." Her touch was brief, professional, maybe, but it stayed long after I left. Outside, the rain had stopped, but everything still shimmered, the world soft and half awake. I stood there, staring at the reflection of her office window from across the street. The lavender scent still clung to my sleeve. In the cab ride home, I kept replaying her voice in my head. The softness of it. The way she said, "You're safe here." For the first time in months, the silence in my chest didn't hurt as much. I didn't know then that my healing would destroy both of us. The following week, I found myself sitting in the same waiting room, listening to the soft trickle of the water fountain. The lavender scent was stronger that day, or maybe I was just noticing things more clearly now. Something in me had shifted after the first session. It was like a small window had opened inside me, and through it, I could breathe again. Dr. Harper greeted me with that same quiet warmth, that same steady calm that made the world outside disappear. "How have you been, Olivia?" she asked. Her voice wasn't just professional, it carried something more personal. Something that made my name sound like an invitation. I told her I'd been sleeping a little better, eating again, trying to put pieces of myself back together. She smiled, but not the kind of smile therapists give to make you feel better. It was smaller, softer, almost proud. "That's good," she said. "You're allowing yourself to exist again." We talked, and time slipped away. She didn't look at her watch once. When I cried mid-sentence, she didn't interrupt or scribble in her notebook. Instead, she leaned forward, close enough that I could see the faint lines near her eyes, the kind that come from years of listening. She reached out, her fingertips brushing the back of my hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "Let it out." The touch was brief, but my pulse stuttered. It wasn't romantic, it was something deeper, stranger. A connection that didn't belong here, in a room meant for healing. After that day, every session became easier and harder. Easier to talk, harder to leave. By the fifth appointment, she had stopped sitting across from me. Instead, she sat in the armchair beside the couch, closer, almost too close. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe it was part of her method. But when she laughed softly at something I said, her knee brushed mine, and neither of us moved away. Sometimes she shared little fragments of her own life between my confessions. "When I was your age," she said once, "I thought love would save me, but it only showed me what I'd been missing." Her tone carried the faint echo of heartbreak. She told me about her divorce, how her ex-husband said she was, too distant, too lost in other people's emotions to have any left for herself. She said she'd spent years trying to be someone's perfect partner and had forgotten who she was. There was something raw in the way she said it, like she wasn't just telling a story, she was revealing a wound. I remember asking quietly, "Do you ever get lonely?" She looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Every day," she said. "But it's easier when I'm here." Something inside me twisted. I should have looked away. IDN single quotes T dot after that. The air between us was different, warmer, heavier. Sometimes she'd adjust a strand of hair that had fallen over my face. Other times, when I cried, she'd place her hand on my shoulder or cover my trembling fingers with her own. It was all small gestures, innocent enough to justify, but I felt them for hours after leading her office. Therapy stopped being therapy. It became my sanctuary, my only safe place. There were nights I couldn't wait for Tuesday just to sit across from her and hear her say my name. She made me feel seen in a way that frightened me. I started replaying our conversations in my head, memorizing her voice. Every word, every look, every pause became something I carried with me like a secret. One afternoon, I broke down completely. We were talking about my ex, and suddenly, all the numbness cracked open. I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. She moved from her chair to sit beside me, pulling a tissue from the box, brushing tears from my cheek with her thumb. "Hey," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "You're doing so well. You don't have to hide from me." Her face was only inches from mine. I could feel her breath warm against my skin. I looked up and our eyes locked. Something unspoken passed between us, something that felt dangerous, but safe all at once. She stayed there for a long time, her hand still on my face. Neither of us moved. The silence stretched until it felt like its own language. Then she finally stood, smoothing her skirt, her composure returning like a curtain being drawn. "Take a deep breath," she said softly, her tone once again professional. "Let's come back to the moment." But I couldn't come back. Not really. After that day, the boundaries blurred more with each visit. She'd sometimes mention how energy flows through the body and how tension gets stored in muscles. One evening, she suggested we try something new, a body-based relaxation technique. "It's to help release anxiety," she explained, her tone clinical but her eyes gentle. "It's completely safe, but I need you to trust me." I hesitated, but the truth was, I already trusted her more than I trusted anyone. So I nodded. She guided me through breathing exercises, her voice low and rhythmic. I closed my eyes, letting her words move through me. "Relax your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Feel your chest rise and fall." Her tone was soothing, almost hypnotic. Then she placed her hand lightly over my wrist, feeling my pulse. "Your body's still holding tension," she murmured. "Can I help you release it?" I opened my eyes. Her face was closer than it should have been. I didn't speak. I just nodded. Her fingers pressed gently along my forearm, tracing slow, measured lines. It wasn't sensual, not yet. It was caring, grounding. But beneath that care, something unspoken pulsed, a quiet electricity neither of us named. The sound of rain outside filled the silence. My heart was beating too fast. She must have felt it because she smiled faintly and whispered, "Good. That means you're alive." I should have pulled away. I didn't. When the session ended, I felt lightheaded, calmer, yes, but also more tangled inside than before. There was a new kind of ache in me, one that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with her. She walked me to the door as always, but this time she didn't let go of my hand right away. Her thumb traced a small circle over my skin before she finally released it. Her voice was low when she spoke. "You need to trust me completely, Olivia," she said. "Only then can we heal what's broken." I nodded, but inside, I wasn't sure which one of us she was talking about anymore. The rain that evening was relentless thin, silver lines streaking across the windshield, blurring the world into motionless water and light. I almost didn't go. My hands were shaking too much on the steering wheel, and for a moment I thought about turning around, crawling back into bed, and pretending therapy didn't exist. But something in me ached to see her again. Dr. Harper had become my one constant, the quiet anchor in a life that kept slipping away. By the time I reached her building, I was soaked from the short run from the car to the door. The hallway smelled faintly of rain and coffee. Her office light was already dimmed, glowing warm against the darkness outside. She opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been waiting. "Olivia," she said softly, "you're drenched. Come in." Her voice was low, careful, almost a whisper. I stepped inside, dripping water on the polished floor. She took my coat gently, hanging it near the window, and handed me a towel. Rough day? I nodded. I just feel numb. She studied me for a long moment before replying. Then today, we'll try something different. She motioned for me to sit on the couch while she dimmed the lights further. The room filled with a faint amber glow from a single lamp, and soft instrumental music hummed from a speaker near the bookshelf. It was slow, haunting, like the kind of melody that plays when the world is falling asleep. I want you to let go completely tonight, she said. Just breathe. No words, no analyzing. Just feel. I closed my eyes. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Her voice came from somewhere close, now closer than usual. You've been living inside your pain for so long that your body doesn't remember peace, she murmured. Sometimes to heal, you have to let someone guide you out of it. I didn't move. My fingers clenched against my knees. I don't know how to let go, I whispered. That's why I'm here. The way she said it steady, certain, unraveled something in me. I nodded, still trembling. She stepped around behind me, her movements unhurried. May I? She asked, her hands hovering near my shoulders. I nodded again. Her palms rested lightly on my shoulders, warm through the fabric of my shirt. Breathe in slowly, she whispered, and exhale the weight. Her touch was meant to be grounding, but it sent a strange, delicate shiver through me. I could feel the rhythm of her breathing behind me, syncing with mine. Your pain isn't just in your mind, she continued, her tone softer now, almost intimate. It's stored in your body. Every heartbreak, every loss, it lives here. Her hand slid downward, tracing along my upper arms, slow and deliberate. We need to help your body remember safety. I wanted to ask what that meant, but the words wouldn't form. The air in the room was too still, too full. She moved around to face me again, kneeling slightly to meet my eyes. May I help you relax your muscles? She asked, her voice threaded with gentleness. I hesitated, then nodded, because that's what I always did when she asked me to trust her. She smiled faintly and reached for my jacket, still damp from the rain. This might be keeping you cold, she said, her tone calm. Professional on the surface, but her eyes lingered longer than they should. She slipped it off my shoulders slowly, the fabric dragging softly against my skin. When her fingertips brushed the back of my neck, I felt it something shifting in the air. Not quite touch, not quite distance. Something alive. She placed the jacket aside and said quietly, Better? I swallowed hard. Yeah, I breathed, though my heart was thundering. Her hands returned to my shoulders, bare now beneath the thin cotton of my blouse. The movement was deliberate, slow enough that I could have stopped her if I wanted. But I didn't. Just breathe, Olivia, she whispered, her face now close enough that her words brushed against my ear. You're safe with me. The music in the background seemed to fade, replaced by the sound of rain against the windows. My eyes fluttered closed as her hands rested gently against the base of my neck, fingertips tracing tiny, soothing circles. Then the air shifted again. A pause. Silence. I felt her move closer, and before I could understand what was happening, her breath was on my skin. Her lips grazed the side of my neck, a soft, trembling touch, almost hesitant. Almost searching dot, my entire body went still. Every instinct screamed that something wasn't right, that this was a line that should never be crossed. But I couldn't move. My body betrayed me, frozen between fear and the ache of being wanted. She didn't move away. She stayed there for one suspended moment, her breath warm, her voice breaking the silence. You're safe, she whispered again, softer this time. I wanted to say no. I wanted to ask why, but nothing came out. The air was too heavy with confusion, and my chest ached with something that wasn't quite pain, wasn't quite comfort. When she finally stepped back, I exhaled shakily. She didn't meet my eyes. She only said, "You did well tonight, Olivia. You're learning to trust." Trust. The word echoed like an accusation. I sat there for a long time after she turned off the music, staring at my hands, feeling the ghost of her touch on my skin. I wanted to believe it had been part of the therapy, some advanced form of emotional release. But deep down, something inside me whispered otherwise. When she finally opened the door for me to leave, I could barely look at her. "Get some rest," she said softly, her tone back to its calm, professional rhythm. "We'll talk next week." Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. It came down harder now, blurring the streetlights and pulling at my feet. I stood there for a long time, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was it wrong? Or was it what I'd been craving all along, someone to touch the parts of me no one else had dared to reach? I walked away that night with my heart pounding, my body trembling, my mind caught between clarity and chaos. I told myself it was part of the process, that maybe healing just hurt in strange ways. But as I lay in bed hours later, replaying the warmth of her breath against my skin, I knew something inside me had changed. Something irreversible. I thought healing had touched me, but it was something else entirely. The days that followed that night blurred into a slow ache, half guilt, half hunger. I tried to convince myself it had been nothing more than a misstep in therapy, that Dr. Harper had just been trying to comfort me. But each time I closed my eyes, I felt the ghost of her breath on my skin, the warmth of her voice saying, "You're safe with me." Safe. How cruelly the word echoed now. I ignored her calls at first. 3 missed ones, then 2 messages left on voicemail, each softer than the last. "Olivia, it's okay if you need space. I just want to make sure you're all right." Her tone wasn't clinical. It trembled. I could hear her exhaling between sentences, as if holding back something she couldn't name. I didn't answer, but that didn't stop me from replaying her voice in my mind. I'd sit on my bed, staring at the empty side of the pillow where my ex-girlfriend once slept, and imagine Harper sitting there instead, the way she listened, the way her eyes didn't flinch from my pain. When I finally saw her number flash again, I picked up. "Olivia?" Her voice was soft, like a bruise you didn't want to touch. "Yes, I was worried," she said. "You missed our last sessions?" "I know," I whispered. "I just needed to think." A pause. "Then would you come in tomorrow? We can just talk. No therapy. No agenda." Something in the way she said talk made my chest tighten. The next day, I found myself standing again before her office door, heart trembling as rain trickled down my coat. The same lavender scent drifted through the air when I stepped inside, familiar and disarming. Harper was waiting by her chair. She didn't wear her usual professional calm today. Her hair was loose, her eyes softer, almost red. "Olivia," she said quietly, gesturing for me to sit. "I need to say something first." I didn't move. I just stood there, frozen between fear and longing. "I crossed a line," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "What happened last time, it wasn't fair to you. I should never have let things go that far. It wasn't professional. It wasn't right." I searched her face for distance, for coldness, but found only guilt and something else beneath it, something raw. "I keep telling myself it was emotional transference," she whispered. "That what happened came from confusion, from empathy turned into something else. But the truth is, I think about you, Olivia. Too much." My breath caught. I wanted to hate her for saying it, for making real the thing that had been haunting me. But instead, I felt a sting of recognition. "I've been thinking about it too," I said softly. "About you." Her eyes flickered wide, startled, almost pained. "Don't say that," she murmured. "Why not?" because it'll make it harder to stop. She turned away, pressing her fingers to her temple like she was holding back tears. The silence stretched, and all I could hear was the rain tapping softly on the window. Finally, she looked up again. "You don't know what it's like," she said, her voice trembling. "To love someone you're not allowed to touch." Something inside me broke, not in pain this time, but in recognition. I'd spent months starving for affection, for someone to look at me and see me. And here she was, the one person I shouldn't want, offering me the thing I'd been dying for, understanding. We didn't touch that day. We just talked, or maybe confessed. I told her about the nights I couldn't sleep, how my thoughts kept circling back to her voice, her hands, her kindness. She told me about her divorce, about how loneliness creeps even into the most disciplined hearts. When I stood to leave, she reached out, hesitated, then let her hand fall. "Take care of yourself," she said, but her tone betrayed the words. That night, I got her message at 12:37 a.m. "Are you okay?" I replied without thinking, "Only when I hear from you." After that, it became a quiet, dangerous rhythm. Little things at first, short texts after sessions, questions that blurred the line between patient and something more. "Did you sleep well?" she'd ask. "You deserve peace, Olivia." Then came late night calls. Her voice softer, more fragile in the dark. Sometimes she'd talk about her day. Sometimes she'd just listen to my breathing. Once she said, "It's strange. I feel closer to you at midnight than I do to anyone in daylight." We both knew what was happening, and neither of us stopped it. Each time I saw her, the air between us carried a pulse, invisible but alive. When our eyes met, the room seemed to shrink, the world to fade. She didn't sit behind her desk anymore. Sometimes she'd sit beside me on the couch. Our knees would almost touch. Sometimes her hand would brush mine, accidentally at first, then not so accidentally. I told myself it was still therapy, that she cared for me as a person, not a patient, that healing could look like this, like tenderness, like connection. But somewhere deep down, I knew it wasn't therapy anymore. It was something broken, beautiful, and wrong. I started counting the days between our sessions like a lovesick teenager. I'd spend hours drafting texts I'd never send, only to erase them before dawn. She, too, seemed caught between two worlds, one where she was my therapist, and one where she was something else entirely. And when she whispered my name at the end of a call, "Good night, Olivia," I could hear the weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. It should have ended there. It should have burned out under the light of reason. But it didn't, because the truth was simple, cruelly simple. I wasn't her patient anymore. I was her secret. It began quietly, the way all disasters do. Not with shouting, not with blame, but with whispers. Someone must have seen us. Maybe it was the receptionist who noticed how long I lingered after sessions, or the colleague who caught the way Harper looked at me one afternoon, a glance that wasn't professional, not even close. Whatever it was, the silence we had built our secret inside began to crack. One morning, I woke to an email from the city's mental health ethics board. The subject line, "Notice of Inquiry." My stomach dropped. I read it 3 times before my vision blurred. They wanted to speak with me in connection with ongoing concerns regarding Dr. Harper's conduct. I sat frozen at my kitchen table, the rain outside pounding harder than usual, like the sky itself was pressing against the windows. I didn't move for hours. My phone buzzed. "Harper, don't answer it," I told myself. But I did. Her voice was raw. "Olivia, you got it too?" "Yes, I'll fix this," she said quickly. "Just don't say anything yet. They don't need to know the details, please." Her words came out desperate, trembling. "If you tell them, they'll take everything from me. My license, my reputation, it'll all be gone." I wanted to say, you should have thought about that before you crossed the line, but my heart still hurt for her. I still loved her, or at least the version of her who had once made me feel safe. When the day of the inquiry came, I dressed like I was going to a funeral. My own, maybe? The waiting room smelled of old carpet and disinfectant. Across from me sat a man in a navy suit holding a clipboard. He didn't look at me inside the boardroom. The lights were too bright. 3 people sat behind a long table, neutral faces, gentle tones. They asked me to describe the nature of my sessions with Dr. Harper. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold the paper cup of water they gave me. Olivia, one of them said softly, "You are not in trouble. We just need to understand what happened." I could have lied. I could have said nothing happened beyond comfort, that Harper was just kind, that I'd misunderstood. For a moment, I almost did. But then I saw Harper's face in my mind, the way she'd whispered, "Trust me completely," and suddenly, trust felt like a wound. I didn't imagine it, I said quietly. She touched me. It wasn't just therapy anymore. The room fell silent. I told them everything. The touch, the kiss, the blurred line between healing and harm. My voice broke halfway through, but I didn't stop. When I finished, one of them nodded, not unkindly. "Thank you for your honesty." When I left the building, I felt hollow, as if I had betrayed her, but also myself. That night, Harper called. I almost didn't pick up, but I couldn't ignore the ache of her voice on the voicemail. When I answered, she didn't say hello. Just, "You told them." Her tone wasn't angry. It was broken. I had to, I whispered. They asked me the truth. The truth? She repeated, her voice trembling. "Do you think they'll understand what it was between us?" That it wasn't manipulation, it was wrong. I cut in. "It was wrong, Harper." There was a long silence. Then she said, very quietly, "I only ever wanted to heal you, Olivia. I never thought you'd destroy me." The line went dead. Weeks passed. I saw her name appear in headlines I didn't want to read. "Respected therapist loses license after ethical violation." Some articles were clinical, others cruel. The words "inappropriate relationship" appeared again and again, like a scar branded onto her name. I didn't reach out. Neither did she. I heard she moved away to a small town up north, somewhere near the coast. Someone said she started writing a book on boundaries and human emotion. I wondered if I was in it, if somewhere in her words I existed as a mistake. Or maybe a ghost status for me. I stopped therapy entirely. The idea of sitting in another room like hers, warm light, soft scent, careful questions, felt unbearable. I tried dating again, tried pretending I was fine, but every gentle voice felt like a trap. Every act of kindness made me flinch. Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll through our old messages, half deleted, half saved by accident or weakness. I'd read her words, "You're safe with me," and wonder when that sentence turned into a lie. I told myself I did the right thing, that truth mattered more than loyalty. That confession was the only way out of a poisoned bond. But some nights, when I lay awake, I still felt her presence, like a hand that had once held mine too tightly. I saw her once, months later by chance. A crowded cafe, a winter afternoon. She was standing near the window, holding a cup of coffee, hair tied back. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and chose not to. For a moment, I thought about walking over, saying I'm sorry or thank you, or maybe nothing at all. But then I realized we had already said everything there was to say. We had both lost something sacred that day, her career, my trust, whatever fragile hope had existed between us. There was no villain left to blame. As I turned to leave, I caught her reflection in the glass, older, sadder, and still impossibly calm. It struck me then how love can look like healing until it burns you from the inside out. I didn't destroy her. We destroyed each other. Now, when I think of her, of the office with the lavender scent, of the rain tapping the window, of that voice that once felt like home, I understand something I couldn't before. Some touches don't heal, they haunt. I never sent the letter. I wrote it one night when the rain wouldn't stop, the kind that feels endless, like the sky is confessing something it's been holding for too long. I didn't plan to write it. It just happened. One word after another, bleeding onto the page, until it felt like she was sitting across from me again, listening quietly, like she always did. Dear Harper, it's been a long time. Months, maybe years, I'm not sure anymore. Time doesn't feel linear when someone's shadow still walks beside you. I don't even know where you are now. Someone said you moved near the coast, that you live quietly, that you write. I hope the sea gives you peace. I hope it forgives you more gently than I ever could. I've started this letter so many times in my head. Sometimes it begins with anger, sometimes with gratitude. But today, it begins with truth. You were the first person who ever made me feel seen. Not just looked at, seen. You found me when I was drowning and didn't pretend to pull me out. You just sat in the water beside me. You didn't promise to fix me. You promised to understand. And maybe that was the problem. I want to thank you for that. For the calm in your voice. For the safety I felt when I thought nothing could ever feel safe again. You reached into my silence and reminded me that I was still alive. But I also have to tell you this. You broke me, Harper. You didn't mean to, I know that now. But you did, because healing and love are not the same thing. And somewhere between those two words, we both got lost. You once said pain lives in the body, that the only way to free it is to let someone in. I let you in completely. I let you touch the parts of me that were supposed to stay untouched, not just my skin, but my trust, my vulnerability, the pieces I'd never shown anyone. You called it therapy. I called it love. Maybe it was neither. Maybe it was something unnamed, something that only existed in the space between guilt and comfort. You taught me something I'll never forget, that love isn't always romantic. Sometimes it's a wound that never closes. Sometimes it's a lesson carved into you so deeply that even time can't erase it. When they took your license, I wanted to hate you. I tried. But hate is just another way of holding on. And I was tired of carrying you in every heartbeat. I hope you found peace in the wreckage we left behind, because I did. Eventually. Not in forgetting you, but in forgiving the girl who once mistook dependency for connection, who believed that being seen was the same as being loved. If you ever read this, though you never will, know that somewhere out there, a girl you once helped breathe again has learned to stand on her own. Thank you for being the storm that taught me how to survive the rain. Olivia, I folded the letter once, twice, then set it aside on my desk. I didn't seal it, didn't address it. Some words aren't meant to be sent. They're meant to be released. The next morning, I found myself driving again, without direction, the same way I had the day I first went to see her. It was raining, of course. It's always raining when I think of her. The city looked older, quieter, like it remembered. When I turned the corner, I saw it, the building. The same one with ivy crawling up the bricks. The same brass plate that once read Dr. Harper and Associates. Only now, it had a new name, Silverleaf Wellness Center. A different story lived inside those walls. I parked across the street and sat there for a long time. Through the window, I saw a woman, probably in her 30s, walking in with a patient. She smiled the same gentle smile Harper used to wear. The air smelled faintly of lavender again. For a moment, I thought about going in, about sitting on that couch one more time, breathing in that same quiet air, pretending I could start again, but I didn't. I stepped out of the car, pulled my coat tighter, and stood in the rain. The sound was soft, rhythmic, like the city was exhaling. I looked up at the window that used to be hers. The same light still glowed behind it. A woman with an umbrella passed by and glanced at me curiously. I smiled faintly and shook my head. "Not this time," I whispered, because this time I wasn't broken. I wasn't looking for someone to save me. I was standing on the other side of the story, not the patient, not the secret, just the survivor. I took the letter from my bag, unfolded it once more, and let the rain touch the ink. The words bled, ran together, vanished. I watched them fade until nothing was left but blank paper. Then I let it go. The wind caught it, carried it down the street. Out of sight dot as I turned to leave, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, peace. Not joy, not closure, but peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop rewriting the past in your head. If this were a story, and maybe it is, this would be the part where the music fades, where the rain softens, where the camera pans upward to the gray sky, and maybe you'd hear my voice, quiet but steady, saying, "Healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes it's a circle. Sometimes it takes you right back to where you started, just so you can see how far you've come." I looked at the building one last time, then walked away. The rain slowed. The city felt alive again. I didn't need to forgive her anymore. I just needed to live Dot, because in the end, she touched more than my skin, more than my heart. She touched the part of me I'll never get back.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us. Your feedback is very valuable and will help us improve. May I kindly ask which country you are joining us from?